Sick. Such a shame. Countdown time. It is lame. Do do do. Do 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 do. And there's a
go.
Hey, there we are. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. We're just getting down this morning with some funk.
I told totally. It's like chair dancing.
It didn't help that I unmuted the feed when we were at the 5-minute mark, realized I was unmuted, so I gave a speech, and then I went back to look at it and realized you muted me like 3 seconds after that.
Well, I got to do this twice.
Super chat. Super chat.
LB Sharp.
An extra little super chat.
And Rex Waldy, thank you very much for the super chats this morning, right off the top of the show. That's a great way to start our Sunday afternoon. We've got people that have sent in questions this week. We've got some stuff on my table. We've got lots of things to talk about. Wow, it has been a busy week here at the First Layer. We've got new material in that we're going to be talking about in an upcoming episode. We've got one of those filler dryers from Sunlu that we're going to be talking about in an upcoming video. And we're going to talk about all kinds of great stuff. What have you been doing, Brian?
I've been making more of myself, and this week has been all about dialing in my machines rather than modifying it. And so far, the results are pretty nice, I would say.
That scares me.
Yeah, it does. I'm gonna put this around corners and stuff like that. Actually, I'm gonna keep one at my desk. I think I'm gonna take the full size one back to the office and scare a few people.
All right.
When we have to go back to work.
Oh, your head.
And that was done with the Revo Point, correct?
Yeah, this was scanned with the Revo Point. This one, I did do a little bit of smoothing on the cheeks because the Revo Point, just for those of you who know, if you do multiple passes of your same face and there's any anomalies, you might get little divots and stuff in your face. So it's recommended take the first pass slowly and kind of just go left to right with those. That's usually the best way to get a result. But if you pass multiple times, you may have to do some cleanup. But yeah, the resolution of this machine is... our little Revo Point is pretty shocking for people's faces. But we'll be talking more about that because for those of you who didn't see, Teaching Tech brought out a video this week, and I didn't get a chance to catch up until I watched it the other day. But there's new versions of the software coming out, and so my experience now has changed again because they've added some new features. So we'll be able to do a follow-up once that software is refined, especially the Android app.
Yes, we still haven't gotten that yet. So the API or APK for that we still haven't gotten yet. Brian, do you want to say hello to some people in the chat today?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got the list?
Let me bring out this. You know what? I realized the other week, the participants list, if you guys join and you don't write any messages, you don't show up in the participation list. So even just a quick hello will give me all your names to know you're here. That's not a YouTube shill. That's literally the participants list. So hello to Alteracious. Oh boy, I know where this week is going if he's here. Crap. Yes, it is behind me. Dan Adams, David Sell, Emmanuel Moneri, Dominic Versetto, David Sell. The list is just updating dynamically in front of me here. So Gary T, 777 Thibs, Geraldine Ham, Henry Stoffron. Hopefully, I think you said I got it right last week, but I forgot how I pronounced it then. Art Eckstein. Sorry if I do miss your list because it's alphabetical and updates dynamically. John Kruger, Brian Jackson, LB Sharp, Maker 3D Printing, Naz Masalma, Pab TV, Pierre, PRJ388. I'll go back to the chat afterwards because I see you guys are all popping in like flies. Awesome. Pure Life RC1 TJ, Radmaster, SPC3D, Scarecrow, The Stanza, Ton Palma, and Trevor Rickard. And I see also back here I think we got everybody.
Okay.
3D Printer Creator. Hey, welcome to the show, guys. What a huge participation list. We're up to 53 people already. Welcome, everybody. Happy Sunday. Happy printing. A special shout out to Dan Adams for being the brave person to go outside ice fishing today. It's about minus 20 here.
That's just crazy.
We're staying indoors for now. I did hook up Starlink yesterday, but I was afraid the router would freeze a little bit. So, I'm not going outside. I'm
going to run the little ticker on the bottom to thank all of our members. Now, what is membership to the First Layer? The First Layer memberships there's 3 different levels, and all you got to do is click that little join button to find out all the things that you get for the different memberships. And these people down at the bottom I want to recognize: Robert 954, John Moody, Amanda M, BLC Halifax, Winston Fernandez, DeWitt 3D, Dean Hines, Ian Jones, Morgan Pierce, Joseph Jolly, Pure Life RC1 TJ, and Robert Provo. And then we've got Henry Stofferan, Rex Waldy, Peter Reynolds. And yeah, those are, if I missed anybody that I haven't added this week, I think I've got everybody though. You are members, you are the ones that help us right now through your monthly participation in our little club to keep these things going. And thank you very much for that. So,
okay, I just got to shout out 3D Obsession. I am not going to miss you. 3D Obsession, welcome this week. Yeah, this YouTube thing for the chat. Basically, if you type in the chat, or if you don't type in the chat and you're watching the video, it doesn't show you under participants. So when we did a member stream last week, I thought we had one person there because only one person was really sending us messages at the time. So yeah, YouTube.
We have somebody from Italy here in the house today too. I saw earlier on.
You want me to find him?
Yeah, Jerry, just find them and let's we'll put them up on screen here. Let's talk briefly about the video that we released yesterday, which is on the FlashForge Creator Max 2. Do I like this printer? Not nearly as much as I like the Creator Max. Do I think the IDEX is better? Yes. I think it's better to have independent extruders and heads. On the other one, it does also have independent extruders and that sort of thing, but they are lumped together. Cheers from Italy, Emmanuel. Thank you. So I like the fact that this one has the IDEX, but they dropped the ball on the Wi-Fi, which they took away, and they also took away the ability to store STL files or G-code files in memory on the printer. For me, every once in a while I have to go back and I have to print new things. So it's handy to have those right on the printer. I don't have to reslice them. They're already there. So it is way overpriced in my opinion as well for what it is.
Absolutely. Just wanted to... Oh, hey, before we get through that, there's another super chat. Thank you so much, 3D Obsession.
Super chat.
Love Canada. Where are you from? It's a lovely country up here. Just a little chilly, if you will.
Oh, it's colder out in Edmonton. We got the light end of the deal.
Oh, did we really?
Oh, heck
I didn't
yeah.
know about the cold snap there. Just popping a couple questions here. Dominic Versetto, have you looked at the new Prusa slicer update, the new Cura Arachne? Okay, so just to quickly cover this, because they will be covered soon, but we want to do a bit more in-depth. This here that I showed you, this was sliced in Prusa Slicer. I'll let you make your own opinions on that, but yes, this was sliced in Prusa Slicer. Using pretty much most of the default settings, but I did turn on all the new features. You may see some infill in the mouth there because I haven't quite dug it out yet, but that's my own fault for painting support so deep. Yes, Prusa Slicer is pretty cool there. Cura Arachne, I have played with it once or twice here. Now, for those of you who don't know, Arachne is their new beta slicing engine to make slicing much quicker. From what I had seen so far, I didn't see a lot of major changes, more so than the optimizations. But truth be told, the moment this Prusa slicer came out and I started slicing with that, I haven't been back to Cura since. So just stay tuned. We're going to be covering slicers in the next few months here because the game is changing again. So we will be giving you more in-depth coverage for those of you who are either new to slicing or if you've actually kind of started to master your slicer and want to see what else is out there.
Greetings from Denmark. Kenneth, thank you very much. Denmark, wow. We get people from all over the world watching our show on Sunday, and I can't thank you guys enough. I'm glad that we're branching out and we're reaching more people.
Absolutely.
Rover,
and then
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say Henry Stoffern was asking when will you get Pet G covered? That is also coming up. We're doing some material stuff. Yeah, I don't know if we can see behind me here. Maybe. Yeah, the roll up at the top there that's feeding the printer on the bottom. That is a Pet G that I am working with right now. That actually it likes to be baked quite a bit. I'm also using Prusa Slicer with that, and so we're going to be covering the details of your different materials. Everyone's been running to PLA, but Pet G is a pretty nice material, and when you can get it as cheap as you can these days, I got a couple parts here in front of me. Let's see. I believe this one was sliced with Cura. I don't know if it'll focus at all, but it's all right. It's not too bad. And then this one was sliced with Prusa Slicer with some of their new ironing settings. And yeah, it's white. It's not going to come through very clear. But yeah, Pet G, not hard to print. Just take some settings. So we're going to be covering that in some upcoming videos here.
Yes, we've got new material we're going to be introducing to you coming up on Saturday, or a new material manufacturer from Canada. We're going to introduce their first product, which is PLA. They also have ABS. They've got PETG, and I believe they've got HIPS as well, and they're working on nylon and a few other things. But we're going to introduce those guys coming up on next Saturday, and we're going to start with their PLA. So you want to watch that, because it's very interesting in the material science that goes into making PLA and how the PLA with more of the natural products in it, or the actual products in it, can cause you to have to raise your temperature a bit to print with it. The more pure the material, just so you know, the more pure the material, the higher the temp you're going to have to use. So printing something that has a high concentration of virgin material in it, and I know that's kind of a buzzword, but when you deal with stuff like that, you end up having to print hotter, because the lower temps just don't melt it as good. Now remember, when you're buying a Conofill and you're buying the cheaper brands, the 15 and even some of the $20 brands, you're not getting as pure a material. When you are paying that $25, $30, $35 for a roll of filament, you're, in a lot of cases, you're getting a more pure product. Protopast is a great example of that. You have a pure product that doesn't have a lot of fillers or additives into it. So,
and this is just a natural problem with the industry, right?
Yeah,
because when printers first came out, there was a lot of limitations to keep it below, let's say, 230 on your hot end. And so there was a lot of polymers being generated, which was a combination of PLA, and I think there was some glycols or something there to reduce that melting point effectively. Yes. And the problem with that is you have to go to a manufacturer that is guaranteeing the same quantities and ratios in every batch. And the fact is, with mass manufacturing these days, the stuff that you're getting in right now from anywhere really is going to be a mix and match per batch. So basically our push with virgin material is that, yes, you're going to have to bake it hotter, but it's going to be more consistent batch to batch. And if that's important for you and you're doing a large turnover where you have to slice a G-code file and use it for 6 months, then you want to go the virgin material route.
John wants to know how to set up an IDEX in the Prusa Slicer. That's a good question. We're going to have to save that for another video when we get into the Prusa Slicer, because we are going to be setting up an IDEX. We're going to do the FlashForge Creator Max 2. We're going to set that up in there, and we're going to use that one. And we're going to have to set it up by hand. So watch for that coming soon, John. It's not a question, unfortunately, we can answer today, because I have to experience it for myself.
Yeah, generally, what you got to remember with technologies, just as a heads up if you want to research it yourself, is IDEX is usually handled within the firmware, and it's the same thing with if you had a double nozzle and everything. So you do have to define your slicer to have 2 nozzles, and sometimes you might have to put in a custom script for the nozzle change code, but otherwise it's all standard. It's all handled within firmware. So you can try for the time being until we get that video out, saying in Prusa Slicer that you have 2 extruders. Make sure you know which one is defined as T0, which is extruder 1, and T1 as extruder 2 on your printer. You can always do that by just setting up, do a first print with just thinking there's 1 nozzle and see which one identifies as nozzle 1. That's the only feedback I've had, and that's based off, I think you can kind of see it up here, and I know Alteration is going to mock me a little bit here. But that's my dual nozzle setup up there in the dark. One. And that one there has. Oh, sorry, I'm drifting away because I'm trying to hold a camcorder here on a
That's the one I was just
arm.
getting ready to.
But anyways, that one, everything's handled in the firmware. So if I say change the nozzle, it just bumps up, moves slightly to the different offset, and then keeps going. That's your boring detail on printers with dual nozzles.
So Rover's asking, any experience with G-Tech A30? I'm looking for a profile for the new Prusa Slicer for the above printer. The GA30, you're going to have to take, well, basically what you've already done in other slicers. You can simply take all of that stuff and just port it over to the Prusa slicer as a custom profile, and it should work just fine. You're going to make sure that you've got the bed size right. You're going to make sure that you've got your temperatures dialed in. And I would also take over the start and the end G code from Cura if you've already got them in there, and then just port them over to the Prusa slicer and see how well that works for you. If you want to use the stock Prusa slicer start and end G codes, they may not have everything that you need in there to make your machine operate properly.
Now, we'll be going through setting up a brand new Prusa profile as well soon, too, just because there are some things that come in the default FFF. But I got a question for everybody in the chat. Now, you've seen me playing around with this head all day here. Is this something you're interested that you would like to have the profile for Prusa Slicer that I slice this in, where hopefully all you should have to do is modify your build volume? Let me know in the chat, and if there's enough responses, I will upload it to our Facebook group, and you can download it and give it a try.
LB Sharp says, can you use the Creality 3D viewer over your phone when away from home? Yes, you can. You just have to make sure you've got the software installed, and you're all set to go, because basically what you're doing, you have to sign in, and I don't know if they fixed that yet, because mine still says it fails every time I try to sign in. So if they haven't fixed that yet, you may not be able to, but you should be able to dial it in. I know when I'm in the house, I haven't tried to use it lately, but when I'm in the house, I can find it easily because it's all on the same network. So let's get into one of the questions that came in through email today. We'll start with the question from Wyatt Thompson. He says, my question is for the Ender 3. He says, notice that I am, okay, I'm not sure what that means, but would you suggest a Z-Rod support for the top of the Z-Rod? Would this improve printing for long-term use? I don't think it does, in all honesty, for the Ender 3 or the Ender 3 Pro. I put one on one of my older units, and Brian can attest to this. We did side-by-side comparisons of the two, and to be perfectly honest, if you've got that straight up and down and side to side, you don't need one on the top. And you really, at the end of the day, for something that's as small as the Ender 3, it's not really that necessary. And I don't think over the long term it's going to improve your prints.
Now, where it is valuable, and this is just from my experiences, when you're actually trying to align that rod. And if you go ahead and print that, it's going to tell the rod where it should be at all times, right? So what I recommend doing, if you're going to print one of those, if you are having Z wobble, especially if you have something easy like the Ender 3 where there's only one Z rod, what you do is you print off that part, mount it at the top, and then proceed to go and loosen off the screws that hold the gantry to your T-nut there, or whatever it's called. My brain's blanking on that. And loosen up your coupler at the bottom so that the rod can settle in there, can recenter itself, because the top and the bottom will have the equivalent same offsets from your extrusion. Then once you have that aligned, you tighten in your coupler, make sure it's still, move it up and down a couple times with those screws loose just to make sure it doesn't wobble. Then tighten those in, back it off about a quarter of a turn, we usually recommend, just to give it some play on the way up, and then remove that part, and then you should be good.
Accord XTC says, thanks for suggesting last weekend, Richard. I took your advice and the temperature settings on my Ender 3, and it's printing great now. Fantastic. Love to hear that. I love to hear stuff like that. That makes my day. You know, when it comes to 3D printers, and nothing has really changed in terms of the design of 3D printers over the last couple of years. It's a Cartesian is a Cartesian is a Cartesian, a delta is a delta is a delta, and a core XY is a core XY is a core XY. There haven't been any real innovations in design. And to be perfectly honest, I think the 3 core designs that are out there are not going to change over the next 2 to 3 years anyway. What I do see changing is the technology that is under the hood. Now, we already know that more and more printers are coming with 32-bit architectures built into the board, and they're using silent steppers. A great example is the Mingda stuff behind me. All of their stuff is built on a 32-bit architecture now, which is great. It helps to keep it quiet when it's printing, and mostly what you're going to hear is fan noise. I think as we progress, we are going to see better stepper drivers, and we're going to see better movements that get dialed in a lot faster right from the factory, as opposed to the end user having to dial them in. You still may have to do some of that, but at the end of the day, I think that's where the market is going right now. You are going to see improvements in slicers, however. There's been a lot of back-end improvements now that have been worked on in Cura, which is the number one free slicing software on the market today. Other companies like Simplify 3D, and I've got Simplify 3D, so does Brian, and a lot of you may have Simplify 3D. We know that there hasn't been any innovation in Simplify 3D in 3 years.
Yeah, they've abandoned it altogether.
They've pretty much abandoned it in favor of their new 5 that is still not out. And we were promised that a year and a half ago. It still has not come out. And I don't think that at the end of the day, if they can't cover the bases that things like Prusa Slicer are doing and Cura is doing, it's not going to be worth the money that they want for it. So in the meantime, I would say keep up with your Cura Slicer, keep up with your Cura, and I think what you're going to do is see these changes come over the next few months and over the next year. There are going to be new innovations in our slicers that are going to make them a lot more user-friendly and a lot easier for us to implement into our workflows. We got another question. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, I was going to quickly cover Tom Palma's question. I'm using triangles for infill, and I'm getting triangles that bleed through on my outside final layer. I'll get back to Kenneth's question right after this. So with Cura, one of the biggest settings that you need to look into, and hopefully maybe I might have to blow it up a little bit here. Bear with me. I don't have it zoomed in for this shot, so let's go ahead and bring that over here. Let's try that. Okay, so inside Cura, one of the settings that I don't know why it seems to be sporadically enabled in some profiles is this infill before walls. Now, if you have infill before walls turned on, then when it draws your infill and then it draws your outside walls. And the problem is there's a lot of settings that carry over the filament, overlap them for strength. And if you do the infill before walls, there's a chance that you could actually draw those triangles into the exterior perimeter. Your nozzle will hit that and will micro bump out while it's passing over it. So you want to turn off that setting. That just search up before and make sure it's in your list and just uncheck it. And as you can see, this little arrow means that the stock profile I was working with actually had it enabled by default. So that's usually a big fix for me to get around that. And then of course, whenever you do have infill creeping through, the never fail goat by is to increase your number of shells, increase your wall line count to at least 3. You do that, and then you shouldn't have any infill coming through.
Okay, Kenneth has got a question here, and he's saying that the problem with my CR10 recent fillet with the SKR 1.4T or turbo board and the TMC's 2209, I think that's TMC, it shouldn't be TMS. When printing, the height of the same print file varies. A 30 millimeter print or 300 millimeter print comes out at 20 to 30 millimeters too short.
Yeah,
Brian,
so that,
you want to take that one?
Yeah. The problem with the CR-10S is that it has dual Z rods and that you share the power between both motors there. So if you have it set up in the firmware as 800 milliamps for both, when you deal with the world of basically electrical coils, which is what these motors are, you have series and you have parallel wiring. And on these boards, they're all wired up as parallel, which means the two motors are side by side. Now, basic electrical theory is that if you have devices in parallel, they have to split up the current flow, or the current going into it, if you will, is a summation of the two. And so if you have it set to 800 milliamps in the firmware right now for your Z, each motor is actually only getting 400 milliamps, which may not be enough power to lift your gantry accordingly. And the other problem too is with splitting it, there's no guarantee that the two loads are equal on both sides. And so one motor might actually pull a bit more current because it might have a little less impedance. So my simple answer is go into the firmware. Hopefully you've got it actually exposed in your config menu so you don't have to recompile your firmware. Try bumping that Z up to about 1200 milliamps. Now, the 2209 can handle, I think, up to 2 amps or something ridiculous. So set it to about 1200. And then while it's printing, kind of put your hand back there and just touch those motors and just make sure they're not getting scorching hot there. If they're getting lukewarm, they're probably still okay. But I've found if you are missing, because that's what it is, you're missing Z steps, and you probably see some compression layers on it. Or it might be minuscule enough that's divided across the whole print. But bump that milliamp value up from the 800 to about 1200 and just make sure your motors aren't getting too hot. If they are, just step it back in like 50 milliamp increments, which the firmware actually can do by default, which is kind of cool.
All right, so our next question comes from Steve K., South Florida guy. He says, I purchased the CR-10 V2 3D printer about a year ago. I'd like to put an all-metal hot end on my printer. Following your advice, I went looking at the Micro Swiss all-metal hot end. According to their website, their all-metal hot end will not fit my CR-10 V2 printer, and yet it fits other Creality printers as a direct replacement. I'll tell you exactly what's going on there, and we actually have a slide here. So this is the Creality hot end for the CR-10 V2. Now you can see here that this one looks very similar to and is almost the exact same size as an E3D V6. Now this is a clone of an E3D V6, so what that means to you in the long run is that this is not built the same way as an original E3D V6. Now, the E3D V6 is an all-metal hot end, the way it's designed, the way that it is machined, and you can just replace the brass nozzle with a hardened steel or a stainless steel or even a tungsten steel nozzle, so that you can print other materials like PETG, or not PETG, but filled materials like metal, glow-in-the-dark, things like that. And if you're going to go that route, the price difference between that and the Micro Swiss, I think, is about $20. It's not very much. But the E3D V6 is what you're going to look for as a replacement for the CR-10 V2. Okay?
Now, I'm just going to add to this because, believe it or not, you're actually at a technical benefit over most users, because the reason we push people to Micro Swiss is because no one else really manufactures the, I think it's MK8, is it not?
Yeah, the MK8. There are Chinese MK8s out there, yeah.
Yeah, but but when it comes to actually getting like a compatible drop-in clone, really, usually you have to replace the whole thing. Now, the nice thing about E3D is everything about E3D is kind of modular, and I'm gonna quickly see if I can pull this up nicely here. I've just pulled up Spool 3D because that's my go-to website for parts sometimes here. So here we are on. Yeah, I know. I'm a terrible person, but but what you can see here is you can see they have different heat breaks, like a Mark 8 titanium heat break. Just off screen here is the E3D compatible one. And this is what I wanted to bring up, is you can buy a heat break and turn that V6 into an all-metal hot end just with a single piece. You don't have to buy the whole all-metal kit with V6 stuff.
I have to correct you on that, Brian.
Really?
Sorry.
You've had luck? You've had different luck? Oh.
Yes, I have to correct you on that. You cannot just put in the E3D E3D V6 parts into that hot end because of the way that the heat break itself is machined.
Oh, okay. So they did mention. Okay, so it's not exactly a J-head clone. If you ever do have a J-head clone, or you do have a machine that has a regular E3D, like a Light 6 or anything like that, usually the major difference is this piece right here. But if you ever break your machine, you know, there is little upgrades you can go to rather than doing a full retrofit. So just take a look at your options out there. The caveat is anytime you replace any of these screwing parts, take your time and make sure they're torqued up to each other flush while heated, and then while it cools, it contracts and pulls them even tighter together. Because if you don't do that, your upgrade's suddenly going to become a clogging nightmare. So that's kind of my caveat. Yeah, clogging or leaking, and it happens slow sometimes. I've been printing for 6 months sometimes, and looked underneath and seen a little blob creeping through, and that's just a good time to, you know, do your regular quarterly whatever printer maintenance.
All right, so we have here from Anthony Lambert, but before we do that, we got
Super Chat
from Anthony Lambert. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony.
He's asking, he says, switch my Ender 5 to a dual Mosquito. Having trouble setting up a reliable cure profile. Seems like I have a drastically tweak things print to print versus the tech stock hot end, which was much less particular. The Mosquitoes are a huge leap forward in hot end design. So you really have to know what you're doing when you're tweaking them. And unfortunately, neither one of us have a Mosquito. Or do you have one?
No, I've got the Triangle Lab Dragon, which everyone said was a clone of this, but it wasn't. But now let me understand. I'm hoping, is this the same one we're talking about? The bond? Oh no, never mind. That's just the dual extruder for the Mosquito. So we're probably looking at the whole extruder kit here. Let's see, something like this. Now, if this is the kit you're using, that is a lot of weight for your hot, especially for the Ender 5. So what I would say, there's two issues I have here, and if you've seen the printer behind me, you'll understand my caveats. First caveat is your bed has to be perfectly level. You can't even be using a BLTouch. It has to be perfectly level because your nozzles are side by side and require a certain clearance between the two. And if you don't have that clearance, your second nozzle is actually going to drag across your print at one point, whether it be nozzle 1 lower or nozzle 2 lower. Either way, one of them is going to drag across that. The other issue we can see here, if we look at this whole kit here, that is, they are pancake steppers. I'll give them credit for that. But the two of them combined are going to be the combined weight of one stepper motor at least, and you've got all your gearing and your movement in there, and it's quite a wide body, if you will. So now we have this weighted apparatus bouncing around the frame at the top, and luckily enough, the weight is fixed. It's never going to change, but it still is a fixed weight. So anytime you go direct drive on a machine like this, you need to torque back your acceleration because you've got a much larger inertia traveling with this hot end. Now, this is kind of like the big caveat with direct drives, and we've spoken about this before. I am excited with the new, with all these new printer companies that are coming out with these. I don't know how would we call the offset direct drives, where they have a chain basically, or they have a cable that runs down, so your gear is still back there, but your actual torque application's right at the hot end. I'm happy to see some of those coming out on the market, and that may help. But in the time being, you bought the Bondtech, you bought the good quality item. What I'd suggest is really just kind of take it slow, dial in the machine, assuming it has one nozzle, and make sure it prints okay, and then go and add in the dual color switching options and see if it's a nozzle offset or if it's a temperature issue. There's a plethora of issues it could have, truthfully. Now,
he's saying that he's got it set up in a Bowden setup, so it's a fickle beast indeed, that's for sure.
Oh, you know what, though? That is better, though, because it's going to be less bouncing around load. But, yeah, I do need to put a video together on this here. The fact of the matter is IDEX is the way to go when it comes to dual extrusion nozzles.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it parks the other head out of the way, and then we don't care if they have a slight offset between them. But you're going to be spending a lot of time with this hot end, playing around. And I think that photo, let me see if it actually shows it here. Probably not, but you're going to spend a lot of time adjusting each side so that they have the same offset. And I think it's almost hard to tell in this photo. It almost looks like they're actually slightly offset in this photo too. They're not quite flush to each other. But yeah, there is different hopefully this has some adjustments. I just don't have any experience with this particular hot end to tell you exactly how to dial it in, unfortunately.
Let's get into our last question here on from our emails this week. And this one, you've got the one for Joe Shell.
I sure do.
Okay, so we're going to let Brian take this one because it really has a lot to do with formatting the firmware and making sure that you've dialed in. Basically, the problem that he's having is his screen doesn't light up. And he's followed all kinds of different tutorials, and his screen is lighting, but nothing is coming on the screen. So, Brian, if you want to tackle that, because it is a firmware issue, I am going to have a look at some of the other questions that are coming in.
Awesome. All right. So, purchased the first layer 4.2.7. Well, that sounds fancy. No, I'm guessing he meant Creality's board there. Pardon me. Woo.
Oh, COVID.
And V2, yeah, no kidding. Oh, allergies have been terrible this week here. So V2 color display combo. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is probably, I'm gonna quickly Google this while we read this one out here because I have not heard of that combo there.
And while you're doing that,
super chat.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that super chat. It goes a long way.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. So install the mainboard, install the firmware. Oh, geez, he used the Creality one, so 2.0.1, a little bit dated, but that's okay. With TMC 2225, okay. By SD card format to FAT32. Acquire the firmware from the Marlin firmware service, Marlin crc.id.au. I've never heard of them. I'll have to look into that. Original display shows firmware successfully updated with bug fix. Next step, I installed the new V2 display with the new ribbon cable. And when powered up, it came up with a blank screen. I used the new ribbon cable that came with it. Now, the V2 display, I thought it was a standalone display controller. Isn't that the case?
I think it is.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little confused. I don't know if he managed to get a combo kit that came with the V2 display, because I'm not finding that on Amazon. But let's presume. Let's presume he's bought the independent display. Install the V2 display. Original display works fine on the new ribbon cable, so it appears to maybe be a defective display. Okay, so it should still be a traditional 128/64 display in some form. When I opened the new display, it appeared to may have been returned due to a cellophane protective sleeve having fingerprints on it and partially detached. Yeah, absolutely. I found a video on YouTube demonstrating how to flash a V2 display with a DWIN set folder on an SD card to resolve issues. I contacted Creality and they sent a folder. Well, that's great. Copied it onto SD card, formatted, blah, blah, blah. Screen flashed blue, then bright orange, and the YouTube video said it would. However, I still have a blank V2 display. Okay, so you've got the original Ender 3.1 working. I will have to look up this display. Truth be told, I have no experience with it. However, the DWIN ones, I thought they were standalone and require a serial bus back to the printer. Now, for those of you who don't know, and unfortunately, actually, I thought I just pulled a screen out of a printer yesterday and I can't remember where I put it. So, for those of you who have played with Creality machines, if you look at the back of the LCD, there's 3 connectors, EXP1, EXP2, and EXP3. And these are data buses that go from your main board and actually drive all the information on what I will call a non-smart display. So not things that aren't touchscreen, things that you can't print from an SD card on the screen, just the straight up old blue and white, and then of course the TFL35 in the emulation mode. So EXP1 and 2 were primarily used on like the CR-10S and a couple printers where you have 2 ribbon cables running over to it. Now, when the Ender 3 came out, they eliminated a few of the I.O. going over to the display, and I think it's run in serial mode there, but it only uses EXP3. So if you have 2 ribbon cables, you would use the RepRap Smart Full Discount Controller. I think that's what it's called in Marlin. And then to add more insult to injury and confusion, the CR-10 display is the one used for the single EXP3. So if you're just getting a blank screen backup, you probably have a misconfigured screen there, I would say. Now, it's also possible that the ribbon cable has to be flipped around, but I don't want you to mess around with that because if you don't know what you're doing there, it can cause issues. I've actually got a kit here for manufacturing my own ribbon cables because I need longer ones. So yeah, it sounds like there's definitely a misconfiguration in how it's communicating with that LCD. And I would just check and see the DWin if it has multi-mode operation where you can run it in TFT mode or run it in the full GUI with touch buttons and so forth. So I will need to research that a little bit more, and maybe we'll have to follow this one up on email there. But yes, LCD configuration can sometimes be a pain in the butt.
All right, so our next question is from the Sanska. Have you ever had issues getting support from Creality or ComGrow for things like broken fans and warped print beds? Yes, is the short answer. The problem is that there's a break between, or there's a language barrier. And with the amount of traffic going into Creality, and I believe ComGrow is an offshoot of Creality. That's the way I'm understanding it, because I find a lot of the same people are in ComGrow that are in Creality.
Yeah,
and I talk with them behind the scenes, so
they're kind of like an official distributor, kind of like how like Element 14 and Raspberry Pi have a relationship.
Gotcha.
But yeah, ComGrow, I think they're an official affiliate where they can call it a ComGrow printer, but it's still officially a Creality product.
Yeah. It's tough to get in touch with them. And sometimes it takes a while for them to get back to you. I've waited up to 60 days to get an answer back.
I was going to say, you're still waiting, aren't you? On something.
Yeah. He's also saying that he's got problems with his BLTouch on his Ender 3. It's starting to act up. The pin seems to get stuck every now and then. And that does happen. And part of that is check the black wire that is coming off of the BLTouch and going into your board. If it is touching or very close to the hot end wires, there's so much current and going through those wires to the hot end that it causes the BLTouch to misfire. And this is something that Brian and I have both discovered. The black wire has to be a little thicker, or it has to be away from the rest of the wire bundle. So don't put it down the sleeve. What I would do is I would wrap it in its own sleeve and then zip tie.
At least keep it a good distance from your heat cartridge cables, because those are the most current inducing devices in there.
Absolutely.
Now, another thing too with the pin is the pin has a very tight tolerance. It's the reason why we can get that level of accuracy. And what I've found with some of my machines is maybe once every 50 prints or so, it won't even deploy the probe. It'll say, forget it. And I will go over there and I will manually pull the pin down, power cycle the printer, go into the BLTouch menu, because Marlin 2.07 has that menu now, and I will do a reset, and I will do a self-test, which actually forces it to go in and out, and I let it do that about 15 times before I know it's good. So a little education lesson for the day for those of you who haven't read into the BLTouch documentation. The red light is a great indicator of the health of the BLTouch. Now, if you're watching it print and you see it's red most of the time, but it kind of flickers in and out, that's not a sporadic error. That is actually the BLTouch's indication that it has a power supply issue. So when we break down the BLTouch pins, there's 5 wires. One is the servo deploy, which tells the pin to drop. That's the kind of your board output, if you will. Then you have a power and ground for the BLTouch itself. Then you have 2 more wires, white and black, which are actually the end stop connection inside the BLTouch. You've got a reference ground, which is the black, and you've got the return signal, which is white. And that's why we usually plug it into the last 2 pins of a 3-pin end stop connector, is because we have the ground, we just need to send the signal back. Now, those are ultra thin wires, and I've tried stripping them, and I've got somewhere here, I picked up this week, a 1.25 millimeter IDC connector kit, because I'm actually going to build a little breakout on my BLTouch that goes to a much higher gauge wire to make it more robust. But if you're seeing that power flicker, that little blip here and there, that's actually a good sign to check your wiring, even if everything's working great. And then if you're seeing it strobe on and off in equal pulse cycles, that means there has been some kind of dysfunction. And usually if you catch it, what's a result of is when you're printing, you might have had a little bit of filament bent upwards and your probe tapped it enough to bring it off its magnetic connection on the inside. So it said, whoa, something's not right here with me. I'm shutting down. And so that power blipping in and out says that it usually needs a reset either by pulling the power pins to the BLTouch or power cycling your machine and issuing a reset command. It's a very smart little device for what you pay for. There's a reason it costs $50 Canadian and not $50. There's a lot in there, and understanding your BLTouch, if you're going to spend all that money on a probe, make sure you set it up correctly and heed its warnings so that you know if you're going to have issues with your bed leveling later on.
I want to move Brian up here a little bit. There we go.
Yeah. Sorry, and my camera has a little bit of optical image stabilization to track my face. So if I've noticed it because I have a little preview screen right up here beside my lens. So
and I have a big screen right here.
I always see the same view, and then I see in my corner of my eye, I just see my face go.
So Favi 3D, he says, I have an Ender 3v2 in both X and Y direction. I have big layer shifts. What can be the reason? I can tell you exactly what the reason is. It's your belts. Your belts are not tight enough, or they're too tight. So I would double check them, and then I would go back. Are you using Cura? I hope you are, because if you're using Cura, you can go into the sections on Cura and check out how fast things are moving. If it is moving at 20 millimeters per second, you want to bring that down to about 8.
For the jerk there, right?
For the jerk settings, yes.
Yeah, basically, I gave this analogy probably a couple months ago on one of these live streams, but think of your printer's motion like a car on ice. There's several ways you can make sure that you stop on a corner in the same spot. And notice the best one, in my opinion, is your braking distance, aka your acceleration. The more you pull your acceleration back is equivalent to braking at an earlier point before arriving at that corner. And jerk is
not just me.
Jerk is how hard you take that corner. So a jerk of like 100 mils would be equivalent to driving to there, hitting the e-brake, and then shimmying and trying to go straight. And you're going to overshoot and have wobble on your back end, and that's when you get your little artifacts, your vibration ones.
I think they call that drifting.
Drift. Tokyo drifting. Some people might like that. I like that, but not on my prints. Now, if you pull back your jerk, 8 is a nice, comfortable number. If you took it down to 1, you're going to notice your corners are quite rounded, and it's because it's trying to calculate how to ease into the next direction of motion, and the easiest way is taking basically a very, very wide turn that would be equivalent of crossing 5 or 6 lanes of traffic. You won't have to really slow down as much because you'll be kind of moving into that curve, but now your sharp corners are going to be rounded. So it's a healthy balance. For those of you who don't know, with Creality machines, we do recommend sticking with the 500 millimeters per second squared for acceleration on the axis of X and Y. And jerk, they used to come with 20, but we do recommend 8 or lower for your smoothest prints.
I agree. What's the next question there, Jerry? Has anyone checked out Orbiter Extruder full kit for the CR-10 direct drive for under $60? I have not. LB, I have not. Have you?
I just looked it up. No, it's kind of cute. I mean, it's $60 Canadian, which is kind of high, to be honest. Let me see if I can share my screen on this for a moment here. This is what I'm looking at here. I always get worried when they have that particular red font on a photo because that says to me that, it was like hacked together sort of thing. I mean, it looks kind of cool. I'm not really seeing much on the internal breakdown of how exactly it's working in there. It just looks like it's a little pancake dual gear setup. 36 mil pancake stepper. Oh, and look at those. Look at its choice for wire
connector
colors and that. Yeah, and the connector. So you're not going to have a great time with that connector. I'm going to tell you right now. They should have put a better connector on it. No feedback on these yet. I don't know. You need to okay, so they at least link to an STL, and what I always do with something like this, if I haven't seen reviews on it, we can see did they just copy someone's design? I wonder if they did. Oh no, that's just a mod kit for it. Comments. There's a lot of good comments here, so this is probably going to tell you if people are actually having troubles with working with this extruder.
I like that first one. Does anyone have this thing working?
Yeah, working with a bear. You know, everyone's trying to make up their own things and make their own remixes. One of the most compact and lightest direct drive systems that I've seen. A lot of questions, and that's the thing. I mean, it's a little expensive to be gambling on it. I would probably wait until a few more people have installed it and tried it out, to be honest. But it does look like it has promise. The only thing is I've had mixed results with pancake steppers, and it's just because they're meant for much lower torque ratings. And that's why they can be so small. You can try and achieve the same torque as a regular motor, but it's going to get spicy hot. And you'll see here, judging by the fact we can see the shaft at the base of this pancake stepper, there's no additional cooling at all on these coils. So it might actually get spicy hot. And for those of you who don't realize, this happens quite often actually, is when the filament's going through here, or through our base point here, if this guy is spicy hot, that heat will eventually transmit up through these gears and can potentially soften your filament while going through the extruder. And that's when we start seeing filament grinding happen more often. It's where we can see flexibles start bowing up and missing our tube connections. And now I could be completely wrong here. I'm trying to figure out the flow of filament through this thing, which direction it goes, because that arm must swing in and feed in.
It looks like it's very similar to the Bondtech, only much smaller.
And that's good. I mean, I'm all in favor. I have run the BMG clones and all that, and they've been okay. Truth be told, the biggest success I've had is with the what are they called there? The dual gears, like the Amazon $35 specials. Even with direct drive setups, and I'll try and post some photos, but I actually custom CNC to mount for the dual gear for my CR-10S 5 mega crazy thing downstairs. But yeah, it's in pieces.
It's getting out of hand.
It's my experimentation.
DIY
Hey,
lobotomy wants to know, hi from the UK. Hi, UK. Any
Hello.
news on the last layer? The last layer. If you missed our talk about this a couple of weeks ago, I think we talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the year.
We actually talked about it during our members only stream the other night.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I don't remember hearing about it before that, actually.
Brian and I and Jerry and Jess have all sat down, and we've decided that the last layer, as much as we love the concept of the last layer, we're going to take that content and we're going to include it into the first layer over time. If it has great success, if it deserves to have its own channel, then we may move it to its own channel. But for now, we think it's probably a better idea if we keep it in this content pool. And we've got some painting coming up for you guys and some finishing. I will be showing you how to use XTC 3D professionally, and we're going to be printing another helmet, and we're going to use that on a helmet project. And then we're going to show you how to finish a helmet. We've got one that
for Jerry. Don't tell her about.
I hate it.
Yeah, don't talk to her.
Now I know.
No, don't do it. But we are going to do another helmet, one that actually fits my head.
Oh yeah, the other one doesn't fit his head.
Yeah, the other one doesn't fit my head. My nose sticks
noggin.
out.
All right, I'm just going to answer a quick question here from the stanza. Brian, what printers do you have there behind you? Because I do get a lot of questions about that. Now, you may notice there's a vacant spot right now, and that's because we're actually moving a bonsai tree up here to make this room a little less technologic and more balanced. But what we got here is to the left, we've got my modified... You know what? Let me see if I can camera this. And I'm sorry, guys. This room is a bloody mess right now, so camera angles are annoying. Now, this here is my... this is Jess's CR-10S, and it's printing a giant insert expletive here, puss. Or topos, I guess I could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's pretty much a stock machine. It's using a third-party all-metal what would you call it? Like a micro Swiss style hot end there. But apart from that, it's mostly stock. I just switched out the LCD the other day to the TFT35, which is why you can see it's blue there. Beside that, oh, that's going the wrong way. Beside that, there is my monstrosity CR-10S, which you may recall about 2 years ago, we kind of jammed it up in the studio and did a bunch of crazy stuff to it. Now that one's running the Triangle Labs Dragon hot end there, and it's actually printing PET G right now. And you'll see my BLTouch is flashing. That's how I know, it bumped something there, and I got to redo the wiring. Now above that, if we go up to there, let's see which way we going. We've got that's my hat in the way. There we go. That is my Ender 5. Pretty much stock with the exception of the dual gear extruder. I don't know if I can zoom in. Sorry, the exposure is quite low and I got a lot of light on me here, but that's got the dual gear extruder. Otherwise, it is a standard Ender 5, and I love that machine. Beside it is my adventure in adding the BLV linear rails kit to my dual gear extender Ender 3, if you will. It's got two E3D Light 6s attached together on a custom 3D printed plate with a BLTouch on the front. It works. It just has its moments, and as you can tell, I don't have an LCD attached to it. So right now, it's mostly PC tethered for testing. And then the final machine I got here is our Wanhao D6, which we use primarily for ABS filament. And I've actually got a bunch of parts sitting on top of that box right now, the Econofill. We've just been dumping parts out that machine. You kind of set it up, and it just works. So that's my 6 machines up here, or sorry, 5 machines downstairs. I've got an Elegoo Mars. I've got 2 Ender 3 Ender 3. One's a Pro actually, and one's the original. And then, of course, my big machine that is always in development, if you will.
Well,
we've got a few. I'm sorry. That's my, I always have questions. Now, the printer that you're seeing missing right now, for those of you who didn't have a keen eye before, is an original MakerBot replicator that I bought from the electronic recyclers in Calgary for $50. Everything worked except it needed a new hot end assembly. I looked it up, and the hot end assembly was $300. So I said, forget it. I tore out all the electronics, and I'm currently in the process of retrofitting it just to see what I can do with it. But you know what? It doesn't have a heated bed, so why have the enclosure if you don't have a heated bed?
There you go. I won't run down all of the printers that I have because I have way too many.
Yeah. Well, this is not even your printer room now, is it?
No, this is not the printer room anymore. The printer room is actually upstairs, and in that room we've got 3 different brands of resin printers. We've got one enclosed printer up there. We've got some Anycubic stuff up there. We've got Creality stuff. We've got Lotmaxx stuff up there. There's lots up there. Down here we've got Mingda's. We've got FlashForge down here, and there's a WeDo on the floor, and there's another WeDo which was branded as a monoprice down here as well. And then I think we have another Lotmaxx that's sitting in the laundry room right now that I have to get in.
There's another one in the kitchen too. Don't forget that.
Oh yes, there's one in the kitchen too.
So Brady Phillips asking about adding dual extrude and the BLTouch to my printers. What's the best main boards to go with? In my opinion, the SKR 1.4 Turbo is a great board for its expandability. They also have that, what's that other one, that GTX, or I haven't played with that one, the one that supports 7 steppers plus 4. I mean, it's way overkill. But if you're looking at dual extrusion, I do recommend anything that has at least 6 independent steppers, and because that gives you your X, Y, Z, and Z2, and we'll talk a bit about that in the future. But and then 2 extruders. It gives you some flexibility, and then as well too, if you burn out a pin, you can always just jump the stepper over and reconfigure your firmware for a different position. Basically, any of the turbo boards. Now this week, the Raspberry Pi Foundation released their own silicon, and I've got 6 of those coming in just to play with, because apparently they're 133 megahertz, and they run MicroPython and some form of Arduino. I'm curious to see if anyone creates a breakout board for 3D printers. It is a new architecture, similar to how we had LPC and we have STM32, so I don't know about the Marlin adaptability. But the fact is, we're getting higher clock rates on our base printers now. really outside of deltas and stuff, most of that horsepower is actually going unused if you upgrade to a 32-bit right now, but you've got the overhead room. So Big Tree Tech, honestly, I know the first couple of batches, there was a couple of hiccups with people, but every single one of my machines right now runs the Big Tree Tech boards. Nobody is even coming close on price to dollar to performance ratios, if you will. Who was the company? Large was coming close, and they had some really cool stuff, but they kind of seem to have dropped off the face of the earth. So
I've got a Large board here that we still haven't installed in any printer. So
yeah, and then of course we talk the route about what's that expensive one everyone used to love, that $200 board.
Yeah. I know which one you're talking
exactly.
about.
That's what kind of legacy they left, that we can't even remember the name of them anymore. The fact is Big Tree Tech is dropping it, and the Marlin support for what they call HALs, which is hardware abstraction layers. It's all the different translation of the base C code to different platforms. It's almost robust enough now that you could go to China, find a chip that, as long as it says it runs ARM or runs ANSI C, you can just drop it on a board, and these chips are sub $5 price per unit right now. So yeah, it's a good time to be looking into 3D printer upgrades because it's getting cheaper.
Duet, that's what it is. Duet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you. Because you know what? People would come in when Richard was at Spool 3D there and say, I want to put a Duet into an Ender 3. And we're like, you want to double the price of your printer, basically, to install a board for Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. They just wanted Wi-Fi.
There we go. I want to remind you that if we didn't get to your question today, we do apologize. There's only so much time that we utilize on Sundays. So if your question didn't get answered and you really want to get an answer to that question, send it over to questions@thefirstlayer.com. I get all the questions, I curate them throughout the week, and then Brian gets a copy of them and I get a copy of them, and then we can answer your questions as best that we can. And if we have to do research, we've got a little bit of time to do that. So send your questions to questions@thefirstlayer.com, and they will get answered here on our weekly live stream. As well as I want to thank everybody here today that came by and sat down and asked us questions, and all those that were a part of our super chat today. Thank you again very much for all of your hard-earned dollars, because they go a long way to helping us out. And I also, before we go, I want to put up this one more time. This is all of our members. If you want to become a member, you can always hit that join button down at the bottom. There are 3 levels starting as low as $1.99 a month, and there's a lot of benefit to that. Now, one of the things that we do have to do is tell you about the Discord. It is already set up. We are going to get invites sent out this week. We have members that have sent us in. They're wanting to be included, so we're going to get you guys all of the information to become part of our Discord. And Brian's on Discord just about every day. I'm
actually
not
online 24/7. The only thing I've had an issue with, and I'm sorry in advance for this, guys, is that the Windows client sometimes locks up and then doesn't give me any notifications on there, but it says it received it, so I don't get them on my phone. So I'm still working out that bug. The other problem too with Discord is I can send out a generic invite, but I have to go and add every member manually into their roles. I think we are opening up the Discord part of it to everybody, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. But there is a member section just for our members.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do actually right now, expires infinity. Oh, I guess
While we're waiting for Brian, everyone want to just hit that like button for us. We got 64 people watching and only 34 likes.
Maybe we're behind on refreshing the page. I'm going to post the Discord in the chat here, so I encourage you all to come join us there. There are some layers, member voice and stuff that you won't have access to, but we've just got kind of like a general and a print showcase area. And then if you guys have ideas for new sections too, just let me know and we'll just throw sections in there. But we'll be online most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a fun place. We don't want to discourage people from like avoiding the Facebook group or anything, but we want to give you some options of viewing some prints on the go or having candid discussions. The fact is, Facebook feeds are not great for having candid discussions.
No, they are not.
So check out the chat there. I've posted an invite code, and that will take you right into the 3D printing discussions general general group there, and then send us messages if for whatever reason we accidentally don't get you added into the correct groups there. But should be good to post right away. Let me know.
All right. So with that said, my friends, thank you again. Thank you to Jerry, who was curating our questions today that appeared down at the bottom. And thank you to Brian, who's always here with us, or usually always here with us on a Saturday, unless there's something else that is taking his attention or he's not feeling
like it being a Sunday and not a Saturday.
Yeah.
We're still getting it into our minds. I mean, for those of you who want to go have a laugh, go check out our YouTube page, because the intro says we're still bringing out videos every Wednesday and Saturday, and it was shot in the old studio. So we need to
I have to get that video finished this week for 2021. So we usually do a new channel intro every year, and we didn't do one this year.
That's because we were taking some classes to this. Well, we're still in the midst of classes right now.
So, yes, catch up on questions, John Powell says. We do have to get caught up on questions. And with that said, my friends, thank you again. And remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. See you next time.
See you then.
We're out.
Cool.